emergency transmission crackled through the speakers at Galactic Council headquarters. The voice on the other end was desperate, breaking with static and fear. It belonged to Ambassador Keyleth of the Velran people, and her words painted a picture of horror. "This is Velran Colony 7. We are under attack. The Krathok swarm has entered our system. Our defenses are falling. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need help. Our children are dying. Our cities are burning. Please respond." The transmission played in the Grand Chamber where representatives from 40 different species sat in their designated sections. The room fell silent as the plea echoed through the space. Holographic displays showed the Velran colony, a peaceful world known throughout the galaxy for its hospitals and universities. Now those same displays showed dark shapes descending from the sky, organic ships that looked more like diseased organs than spacecraft. The Krathok swarm. Every species in the chamber knew that name. They were a nightmare made real, a parasitic race that consumed entire civilizations. They didn't negotiate. They didn't take prisoners. They simply fed and moved on to the next world. The council chancellor, a tall being with silver skin and too many eyes, addressed the chamber. His voice was calm, measured, as if discussing trade agreements rather than genocide. "We have received the distress call from Velran Colony 7. The matter requires immediate military intervention. Which of our member states can provide assistance?" Silence answered him. The Thexian Empire representative, a creature that looked like an upright crocodile wearing formal robes, was the first to speak. "The Empire regrets that we cannot assist at this time. Our fleet is engaged in strategic operations in the northern sectors. We cannot spare resources for this unfortunate situation." The Morvian collective sent a simple text message to the central display. "Insufficient military assets available. Request denied." One by one, the great military powers of the galaxy found excuses. The Quilon Federation cited budget concerns. The Draxian clans claimed their ships were undergoing maintenance. The Corvin Alliance simply didn't respond at all. In the background, the Velran transmission continued to play on a loop. "Please, anyone, our people are dying. Please help us." The Chancellor looked uncomfortable. "Perhaps we should form a committee to study the situation. We could draft a strongly worded statement condemning the swarm's actions." More silence. Everyone knew what that meant. The Velran would die while committees met and politicians debated. On Earth, billions of light years from that council chamber, Captain Jinho sat in his office at Terran Defense Force headquarters. He was a compact man with short black hair and tired eyes. He had spent the last 6 hours reviewing supply reports and maintenance schedules. Being a ship captain involved more paperwork than anyone told you about. His communications officer, a young woman named Nari, knocked on his doorframe. She didn't wait for permission to enter. That was one thing Jinho appreciated about his crew. They treated him with respect, not fear. "Captain, you need to hear this," Nari said. She looked pale. It came through the Galactic Council network. She played the transmission. Jinho listened to Ambassador Keyleth's voice breaking as she begged for help. He watched the footage of swarm ships descending on peaceful cities. He saw the readouts showing Velran defense satellites going dark one by one. When it finished, Jinho sat very still. Nari knew that look. It was the same expression he wore before every difficult decision. "How many ships do we have ready for deployment?" Jinho asked quietly. "5, sir. The Indomitable, the Defiant, the Resolute, the Steadfast, and the Valiant. But sir, Earth Command hasn't authorized any action. The Council is still deliberating." "Deliberating," Jinho repeated. He pulled up the galactic map on his desk display. Velran space was far from Earth, nearly at the edge of known territory. It would take days to reach them even at maximum speed. "How long do the Velran have?" Nari checked her tablet. "Intelligence estimates 3 days before the swarm completely overruns the colony." "Maybe less," Jinho stood up. He was not a tall man, but he carried himself like someone much larger. "Get me Admiral Wanshik at Earth Command. And tell Hyunwoo I want the fleet ready to depart in 6 hours." "Sir?" Nari's voice rose in surprise. "We don't have authorization." "Then we'll get it." Jinho moved past her into the corridor. "Call the crew. Everyone we need. Tell them to report to the Indomitable immediately." Within an hour, Jinho stood in Admiral Wanshik's office via holographic communication. The Admiral was an older man with gray hair and a face carved from stone by decades of military service. "You want to take 5 ships across the galaxy to fight the Krathok swarm," Wanshik said slowly. "Have you lost your mind, Captain?" Sir, a member species of the Galactic Council is calling for help, and 40 other species are ignoring that call. Wanshik leaned forward. There's a reason for that, Jinho. The swarm has destroyed 6 civilizations. 6. They adapt to every weapon, every strategy. Military analysts say it would take 50 capital ships minimum to have a chance against a swarm fleet. You have 5. Then we'll have to be enough, Jinho said. This is suicide. It's the right thing to do. Wanshik stared at him for a long moment. Then the Admiral sighed, suddenly looking much older. Humanity has only been part of the Galactic Council for 20 years. We're still trying to prove ourselves, to show we belong among the great powers. If you do this, if you fail, every species out there will use it as proof that humans are reckless, emotional, unsuited for the responsibility we've been given. And if we do nothing? Jinho asked. What does that prove? That we're just like them? That we calculate the value of innocent lives based on strategic advantage? You're asking me to risk Earth's reputation and 5 warships on a mission that every military expert says is impossible. I'm asking for permission to do what no one else will. To answer when someone calls for help, Wanshik was quiet for a long time. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled. It was a grim smile, but genuine. You know what? The hell with reputation. The hell with political calculations. You're right. Someone should go. Might as well be us. He tapped his desk. You have authorization, Captain. Take your ships. Save those people if you can. Thank you, sir. Jinho, don't thank me yet. Just come back alive. The hologram faded. Jinho stood alone in his office for a moment, feeling the weight of what he had just set in motion. 5 ships against a force that had destroyed civilizations. His crew, his people, heading into almost certain death. But somewhere across the galaxy, people were dying. Children were crying. Cities were burning. And nobody was coming to help them. Nobody except humanity. Jinho walked to the hangar bay where his crew was gathering. He saw Nari checking the navigation systems. Hyunwoo was elbow deep in an engine panel, already making modifications. Sora was loading medical supplies. Taewon was running diagnostics on the weapons arrays. They all looked up when he entered. They knew what was coming. They had heard the transmission. They had seen the footage. We're going, Jinho announced. Earth Command has given us authorization. In 6 hours, we depart for Velrun space. I won't lie to you. The odds are bad. The swarm has never been defeated. Most of us probably won't come back. He paused, meeting each of their eyes. If anyone wants to transfer off this mission, no one will judge you. This isn't your fight. Nobody moved. Nari spoke first. With respect, Captain, yes it is. Hyunwoo nodded, wiping grease from his hands. Someone called for help. We answer. Sora smiled softly. That's what humans do. Taewon checked his weapons one more time. Let's show the galaxy what fury looks like. Jinho felt something fierce and bright burning in his chest. Pride. Determination. And yes, fury at a galaxy that could hear children dying and decide it wasn't profitable to help them. All right then, he said. Let's go save some lives. 6 hours later, 5 human ships jumped into hyperspace, racing toward a battle they couldn't win against an enemy they couldn't beat, because nobody else would go. And across the galaxy, people were about to learn what humanity was really made of. The journey through hyperspace gave them 3 days. 3 days to prepare for a battle against an enemy that had wiped out 6 civilizations. 3 days to get ready to die. But humans were good at making the most of impossible situations. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Jinho stood watching the streaking lights of hyperspace flow past the viewports. Behind him, Nari worked at the navigation console, constantly checking their course. They were pushing the engines harder than recommended, but nobody complained. Every minute counted. Captain, incoming transmission from the other ships, Nari said. Commanders want to discuss battle strategy, Jinho nodded. 4 holographic figures appeared around the bridge. Each one commanded one of the other ships in their small fleet. He knew them all. Good people. Good officers. Commander Yunji of the Defiant spoke first. She was a weapons specialist who had fought in the border wars. I've been reading everything we have on the Krathok swarm. It's not good news. They use biological weapons, acid sprays, boarding pods that burrow through hull armor. Conventional tactics don't work because they adapt too quickly. They're more like an organism than an army, added Commander Minho of the Resolute. They think as one. Kill enough of them and they learn, change their approach. Jinho listened carefully. What about their command structure? They use hive ships, Yunji explained. Large organic vessels that coordinate the smaller craft. Take out a hive ship and the local swarm loses cohesion for a while, but these ships are massive and heavily protected. How many hive ships are we facing? Scans from the Velrun colony indicate at least 3, maybe 4. Plus hundreds of smaller attack craft. The other commanders looked grim. Those were terrible odds. Then we focus on the hive ships, Jinho decided. Hit them hard and fast. We can't win a prolonged battle, so we don't fight one. Speed and aggression. Make them react to us instead of us reacting to them. Commander Daehyun of the Steadfast, an older officer with decades of experience, shook his head slowly. Captain, with respect, charging directly at hive ships is suicide. We'll be torn apart before we get close. Maybe, Jinho agreed. But what choice do we have? Fight smart or don't fight at all. And not fighting isn't an option. The meeting continued for another hour as they worked out the details. It was a desperate plan, but desperation was all they had. Down in the engineering sections, Hyunwoo worked like a man possessed. He had barely slept since they left Earth. His engineering team spread across all 5 ships, modifying weapons and reinforcing systems. Hand me that plasma coupling, he called to his assistant. A young engineer named Jiwon passed him the part. Sir, are you sure this will work? We're basically overcharging the plasma cannons beyond safety limits. It'll work for a few shots, Hyunwoo said, installing the coupling. Maybe more if we're lucky. After that, the barrels might melt or the power systems might explode. But a few shots at maximum power might be enough to crack a hive ship's shell. And if the weapons blow up? Hyunwoo paused, wiping sweat from his forehead. Then we die a little earlier than planned. But we die trying. He moved to the next weapon system. The way I see it, we're all probably going to die anyway. Might as well make it count. Jiwon was quiet for a moment. My family asked me why I volunteered for this mission. I told them someone had to go. That's why we're here, Hyunwoo agreed. Because someone had to go and nobody else would. In the medical bay, Sora prepared for casualties. She knew she would be overwhelmed. 5 ships, small crews, limited supplies. If the battle went badly, she couldn't save everyone. The math was simple and cruel, but she could save some. That had to be enough. She organized her supplies with practiced efficiency. Plasma burn treatments, radiationmills, surgical equipment, body bags. She tried not to think about how many of the latter she would need. Her assistant, a medic named Jihoon, watched her work. Dr. Sora, the casualty projection, I know, she said softly. Don't focus on the numbers. Focus on the people. We save who we can, when we can. That's all anyone can do. Jihoon nodded, but he looked scared. They all were. Only fools wouldn't be scared. Sora had studied the Velrun people during the journey. They were fragile compared to humans with complex respiratory systems and delicate bone structures. If they managed to evacuate any civilians, treating them would be challenging. She prepared separate medical stations with Velrun-specific equipment, just in case. Hope was a strange thing to cling to, but she clung to it anyway. In the weapons bay, Taewon ran his teams through endless drills, loading, firing, reloading. Every second mattered in combat. Every hesitation could mean death. Faster, he shouted as his gunners practiced loading the railgun systems. You think the swarm will wait for you to figure it out faster? The crews worked harder, hands moving in practiced patterns. Load, prime, fire, clear, repeat. Taewon knew these weapons. He had designed some of them, modified others. He knew their strengths and weaknesses. Against the swarm, they would need every advantage. He had also prepared something special. Boarding parties. If they managed to damage a hive ship badly enough, teams would go inside. It was incredibly dangerous, probably fatal. But if they could plant explosives deep in a hive ship's core, they might take out the entire vessel. He had asked for volunteers. Everyone raised their hands. That was humanity. Stupid, brave, impossibly stubborn humanity. On the second day of the journey, they received an update from the Velrun colony. The situation had worsened. The swarm had landed ground forces. Cities were falling. Millions were already dead. Ambassador Kalith's voice came through again, weaker now. To anyone hearing this transmission, Velrun Colony 7 is dying. We have hours, maybe less. If anyone is coming, please hurry. Jinho stood on the bridge, hands clasped behind his back, listening. His crew worked around him, silent and focused. Can we go faster? He asked Nari. She checked her displays. We're already pushing the engines to the limit, Captain. Any harder and we risk damaging the hyperspace drive. Do it anyway. I want every bit of speed these ships have. Yes, sir. The fleet accelerated, engines screaming in protest. They shaved hours off their arrival time. It might not be enough. Probably wouldn't be enough. But they had to try. By the third day, the crew was ready. As ready as they could be. They had reviewed the plans 100 times. Everyone knew their role. Everyone understood they probably wouldn't survive. But that was fine. They had made peace with it. Jinho gathered his senior officers in the briefing room one last time. Nari, Hyunwoo, Sora, and Taewon. These were the people he trusted most in the universe. We drop out of hyperspace in 2 hours, he said. Once we're in normal space, there's no turning back. The swarm will detect us immediately. We'll have surprise for maybe 5 minutes before they fully respond. We have to make those minutes count. The weapons are ready, Taewon reported. We'll hit them with everything we have. Medical is prepared for mass casualties, Sora added. Both ours and Velran civilians if we can evacuate any. The ships will hold together, Hyunwoo promised. I've reinforced everything I could. The modified weapons will work. For a while at least. Nari pulled up the tactical display. I've plotted our approach vector. We'll come in fast and low, using the planet's gravity well to slingshot us toward the largest concentration of swarm ships. It'll put us right in the middle of them. Jinho studied the display. It was a terrible plan. It was also their only plan. There's something I need to say, he began, looking at each of them. We're about to do something incredibly stupid. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and nobody expects us to succeed. The smart move would be to turn around and go home, he paused. But we're not going to do that, because somewhere on that planet people are dying. Children are crying, and nobody came to help them. Nobody except us. So we're going to go down there and we're going to fight and we're probably going to die. But we're going to make it mean something. Taewon smiled grimly. I can think of worse ways to go. At least we'll die doing something that matters, Hyunwoo agreed. Sora nodded. Better to light a candle than curse the darkness. Nari stood straighter. Let's show the galaxy what humans are made of. Jinho felt that fierce pride again. These people, his people, flying into hell itself because it was the right thing to do. All right then. Get to your stations. In 2 hours we fight. They dispersed to their positions. The ship hummed around them, engines pushing them toward battle. Toward probable death. Toward a moment that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. 1 hour before they arrived, Jinho sent a message to the Velran colony. Ambassador Keleth, this is Captain Jinho of the Terran Defense Force. We received your distress call. Humanity is coming. Hold on just a little longer. The response came back quickly. Ambassador Keleth's voice was filled with disbelief. You came? You actually came, but you're so far away. Why would you? Because you needed help, Jinho said simply. That's reason enough. There was a long pause. When Keleth spoke again, she was crying. Thank you. Whatever happens, thank you for trying. We'll do more than try, Jinho promised. As the countdown timer ticked toward 0, the crew took their positions, weapons charged, engines hummed, hearts pounded. The Indomitable and her sister ships prepared to drop out of hyperspace directly into hell. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace into chaos. Velran Colony 7 burned beneath them. From orbit, Jinho could see the scars across the planet's surface. Cities that had stood for centuries were now smoking craters. The ocean near the main continent glowed with an unnatural green light, where swarm bioweapons had poisoned the water. And everywhere, there were ships. Hundreds of them. The Krathuk swarm vessels looked wrong. They weren't built so much as grown organic structures that pulsed with sickly light. They moved through space like predators through water, smooth and terrible. At the center of the formation, 3 massive hive ships hung in orbit, each one the size of a city. Contact in 5 seconds, Nari announced from her station. Her voice was steady despite the fear Jinho knew she felt. 4, 3, 2. The swarm detected them. Alarms screamed across the bridge as hundreds of enemy ships began turning toward the human fleet. Jinho could see them on the tactical display, red dots swarming like angry insects. All ships, weapons free, Jinho commanded. Attack pattern Delta, hit them hard. The 5 human ships opened fire. The modified plasma cannons that Hyunwoo had worked on released their charges. Bolts of superheated energy crossed the distance in seconds, slamming into swarm vessels. The smaller craft disintegrated immediately. Larger ones staggered, their organic hulls burning. Direct hit on multiple targets. Taewon reported from weapons control.
Enemy formation breaking up!
But there were so many of them. For every swarm ship they destroyed, 10 more took its place. Incoming attack craft, Nari shouted.
They're fast!
Swarm fighters, things that looked like flying insects made of metal and flesh, swarmed toward the human ships. They moved in patterns that seemed random but weren't, adjusting their approach as the humans fired on them. The Indomitable shook as weapons fire hit her shields. Nari threw the ship into a sharp turn, dodging a cluster of acid projectiles that would have melted through the hull. Shield strength at 70%, someone called out. Jinho gripped his command chair as the ship spun and dove. Around them, the other human vessels engaged the swarm. He could see the Defiant unleashing everything she had into a cluster of enemy ships. The Resolute was already damaged, trailing atmosphere but still fighting. Target the nearest hive ship, Jinho ordered. All weapons, full power. Captain, we'll never get through their defenses, Taewon warned. Then we make a hole. Fire! The Indomitable's main guns roared. Railgun rounds traveling at incredible speed punched toward the hive ship, followed by plasma charges and missile volleys. The space between them and their target filled with fire and death. The hive ship's defensive weapons engaged. Acid sprays, biomissiles, energy weapons. The barrage was overwhelming. But the human ships didn't slow down. They accelerated, flying straight into the storm. Shield failure in the forward section, an engineer shouted. Reroute power from life support, Jinho commanded. Keep the shields up. They punched through the defensive fire. 2 of their missiles made it past the hive ship's defenses and slammed into its hull. The organic armor cracked, green fluid leaking into space. We heard it, Taewon yelled triumphantly. Then the hive ship returned fire with everything it had. The Steadfast took the full brunt of the attack. Jinho watched on his display as the ship was enveloped in green fire. For a moment, nothing could be seen through the flames. Then the Steadfast emerged, heavily damaged but still flying. Commander Daehyun's voice came through, distorted by static. We're venting atmosphere. Hull breaches on decks 3 through 7. But we're still in this fight. That was humanity. Battered, bleeding, but refusing to quit. All ships concentrate fire on that breach we made, Jinho ordered.
Hit the same spot.
The human fleet coordinated their attack. They had practiced this, drilling the maneuver until it was second nature. Now it paid off. All 5 ships fired on the same point in the hive ship's hull. The damaged section couldn't take it. The armor split open, revealing the fleshy interior of the ship. More weapons fire poured into the wound. Inside the hive ship, something critical was hit. The entire vessel shuddered. Its weapons fell silent. The smaller swarm craft around it began moving erratically, like ants whose nest had been destroyed. It's working, Nari shouted. The hive ship is losing control of its swarm. But their celebration was short-lived. The other 2 hive ships had noticed the threat. They began moving toward the human fleet, and they brought hundreds of attack craft with them. On the surface of the planet, Sora led a desperate mission. She had taken 2 dropships down through the chaos of the orbital battle, carrying medical teams and a squad of Marines. Their target was a refugee center on the outskirts of the capital city. Sensors indicated several thousand Velran civilians trapped there, surrounded by swarm ground forces. The dropship shook as it descended through the atmosphere. Through the window, Sora could see the devastation. The beautiful cities she had seen in the briefing files were gone. In their place, only ruins and fire. 30 seconds to landing, the pilot called back. Sora checked her medical pack one more time. Beside her, the Marines prepared their weapons. They were led by Sergeant Gunwoo, a veteran who had seen combat on 3 different worlds. He looked calm, but Sora knew that was just training. Remember, Gunwoo said to his troops, we're here to evacuate civilians. Fight only if necessary. Our job is to get those people to the dropships and off this rock. They landed hard. The rear door dropped and Sora ran out into a nightmare. The refugee center was a large building that had once been a school. Now it was under siege. Swarm warriors, insect-like creatures the size of bears, were tearing at the walls. The sound they made was horrible. A clicking, scraping noise that seemed to burrow into Sora's brain. Open fire, Gunwoo shouted. The Marines' weapons lit up the area. Plasma rifles burned through swarm warriors. The creatures screamed, turning toward this new threat. More of them emerged from the ruined buildings around them. Sora ran for the refugee center entrance. A group of Velran civilians huddled inside. their large eyes wide with terror. Ambassador Kalith was among them, organizing the others despite her obvious fear. "You came," Kalith gasped. "I didn't believe. I thought we would die here." "Not today," Sora said firmly. She began examining the civilians. Many were injured, some critically. "We're evacuating everyone we can. Can you help organize them?" "The elderly and injured first." Kalith nodded and began speaking rapidly in her own language. The Velrin moved quickly, following her instructions. Outside, the battle intensified. More swarm warriors emerged from every direction. Gunwu's Marines formed a defensive line, firing constantly, but they were running low on ammunition. "Dr. Sora," Gunwu called, "we need to move."
"No, not yet.
"There are still people inside."
We're about to be overrun."
A massive explosion rocked the area. Sora looked up to see a swarm attack craft spiraling down from the sky, trailing fire. It crashed into a building 2 blocks away, the explosion lighting up the darkening sky. In orbit, the battle had turned into a brutal close-quarters fight. The human ships were faster and more maneuverable than the swarm vessels, but there were simply too many enemies. The Valiant was the first to fall. Overwhelmed by dozens of attack craft, her shields collapsed. Swarm boarding pods latched onto her hull like leeches. Within minutes, the ship went dark. "Valiant is down," someone reported. Jinho felt the loss like a physical blow. Over 200 crew on that ship. Friends. People he had trained with. But there was no time to mourn. Defiant and resolute, form up on the Indomitable. He ordered. "Steadfast, you're too damaged. Fall back and provide covering fire." "Negative, Captain," Commander Daehyun responded. "We can still fight." "That's an order, Commander." A pause, then, "Understood, sir," Steadfast breaking off. The 3 remaining mobile ships moved closer together, their combined firepower creating a bubble of death around them. Any swarm craft that got too close was destroyed, but it wasn't enough. They were being pushed back away from the planet, away from the civilians that still needed evacuation. Hyunwoo's voice came through from engineering. "Captain, the modified weapons are burning out. We've got maybe 3 more full-power salvos before they fail completely. The engines, running at 120%. They'll hold, probably." Jinho made a decision. "Nari, plot a course directly through the swarm formation. We're going for the second hive ship." "Sir, that's suicide, I know. Do it anyway." Nari's hands moved over her controls. Course plotted, all power to forward shields. "Weapons, prepare for point-blank firing." The Indomitable accelerated, driving deeper into the swarm. The Defiant and Resolute followed. Energy weapons and acid sprays hammered their shields. Damage reports flooded in. But they kept going, engines screaming. They punched through the defensive screen. The hive ship loomed before them, massive and terrible. "Fire everything," Jinho roared. The 3 ships unleashed every weapon they had at point-blank range. Railguns, plasma cannons, missiles, everything. The hive ship's hull erupted in fire and organic matter. They carved a massive wound in its side. And then the modified weapons overloaded just as Hyunwoo had predicted. Explosions rippled through the weapons bays. Alarms screamed, but the damage was done. The second hive ship was dying. On the ground, Sora got the last civilian onto the dropship. Gunwoo and his Marines fell back. The silence after battle was always strange. One moment everything was noise and chaos and death. The next only the quiet hum of damaged systems and the soft voices of the wounded. Jinho walked through the corridors of the Indomitable, seeing the cost of their victory written on every surface. Scorch marks on the walls. Emergency force fields covering hull breaches. Medical teams rushing past with stretchers. The ship had taken severe damage. So had the Defiant and Resolute. The Steadfast was barely holding together, and the Valiant was gone, along with all her crew. Over 400 people dead, hundreds more injured, for 3 ships barely capable of limping home and 1 colony saved from extinction. In the medical bay, Sora worked without stopping. She had been on her feet for 18 hours straight, treating burn wounds and radiation exposure and injuries from explosive decompression. Her hands were steady, but her eyes were haunted. "How many?" Jinho asked quietly, standing in the doorway. Sora didn't look up from the patient she was treating. 73 dead from our ship alone. 216 wounded. The other ships, the numbers are still coming in. And the Velrin? We evacuated 8,000 civilians. Most of them are injured or sick. We've set up temporary shelters in the cargo bays. It's crowded, but they're alive, Jinho nodded. 8,000 lives, against 400 human deaths. The math was clear, but math didn't make the loss easier to bear. He continued his tour of the ship. In engineering, Hyunwoo was coordinating repairs with what was left of his team. His uniform was filthy, his face covered in soot. How bad is it? Jinho asked. Hyunwoo pulled up a damage report on his tablet. The main engines are holding barely. We can make it back to Earth, but we'll need to go slow. The modified weapon systems are completely burned out. Half our power conduits are fused. And we've got hull breaches on 12 decks that we're patching with emergency sealant. But we'll make it home. We'll make it home, Captain. Can't say the same for the Steadfast. Her main reactor is failing. Commander Daehyun has evacuated most of his crew to the other ships. He's staying aboard with a skeleton team to try to keep her running. Jinho closed his eyes. The Steadfast was dying and Daehyun was going down with her if they couldn't save her. That was the code. The captain stayed with the ship. Tell him to abandon ship. That's an order. Already tried, sir? He refused. Of course he did. On the bridge, Nari was helping coordinate the massive effort to organize the survivors. 8,000 Velrin refugees needed food, water, medical care. The human ships weren't designed for that many passengers. We're converting every available space, she reported. But it's not enough. We're going to run out of supplies before we reach any port. The Galactic Council has stations nearby, Jinho said. We'll stop there for resupply. Nari looked at him. Sir, do you think they'll help? After they refused to come when the Velrin called? They'll help, or I'll take what we need. His tone left no room for argument. A transmission came through from the planet's surface. Ambassador Keleth appeared on the main view screen. Behind her, Jinho could see the ruins of her world, but she was smiling through her tears. Captain Jinho, I don't have words sufficient to express my gratitude. You saved my people. When no one else would come, you came. Why? Jinho thought about that question. Why had they come? Why had 400 humans died for a species they barely knew? Because it was the right thing to do, he said simply. Because someone called for help and we had the ability to answer. Keleth touched her chest, a gesture of deep respect in Velrin culture. The Galactic Council will hear of this. They will know that humanity answered when the great powers did not. I hope they do hear it, Jinho replied. Maybe it will remind them what they should have done. The transmission ended. Jinho sat in his command chair, exhausted beyond measure. They had won. They had saved the Velrin. But the victory felt hollow, purchased with too much blood. 3 days later, the battered human fleet limped into Council Station Gamma, a massive space station that served as a diplomatic hub for the galactic community. The station's traffic control seemed confused by their arrival. Human vessels, this is station control. We didn't receive notice of your arrival. Please state your business. This is Captain Jinho of the Terran Defense Force. We are carrying 8,000 Velrin refugees. We need medical supplies, food, and repair materials immediately. There was a long pause. Please hold for station authority. A new voice came on the channel, speaking with the pompous tone of a bureaucrat. Captain, we cannot provide supplies without proper authorization forms. You'll need to fill out requests through the appropriate channels. This could take several days. Jinho felt something cold settle in his chest. They had lost 400 people saving those refugees. And now some bureaucrat wanted to talk about paperwork. Let me be very clear, he said, his voice deadly calm. We have 8,000 civilians who need help. We have wounded who will die without proper medical care. We are going to dock at your station, and we are going to take what we need. You can either help us or get out of our way. That's not how this works. You can't just watch me. The human ships moved toward the docking ports. Station security ships moved to intercept, but they stopped when they saw the damage on the human vessels. The scorched hulls, the exposed sections, the emergency patches. These ships had been through hell. The station commander, a Thexian official named Vorks, met them at the docking port. He took one look at the exhausted, wounded humans helping Velrin refugees off the ships, and his expression changed. My apologies, Captain, he said quietly. We heard rumors about what happened at Velrin Colony 7. We didn't believe. I'll have medical teams and supplies sent immediately. Thank you, Jinho said. The anger drained out of him, leaving only exhaustion. Captain, Vorks continued, the Galactic Council has requested your presence. They want a full report on the incident. Let them wait. My people and these refugees come first. It took 2 days to transfer the Velrun refugees to proper facilities on the station. Medical teams worked around the clock treating the wounded. The human crews were given quarters to rest and recover. Jinho spent most of that time writing letters to the families of the fallen. 400 letters. 400 people who wouldn't go home. Each one deserved to be remembered. On the 3rd day, he received a priority transmission from Earth. Admiral Wanshik appeared on the screen, looking older than Jinho remembered. "Captain, I have been receiving reports from the Council. What you did out there, the entire galaxy is talking about it. We did what needed to be done, sir. I know. And I'm proud of you. All of you," Wanshik paused. "The Council wants you to address them, to give an official account of the battle. With respect, Admiral, I'd rather stay here with my crew." "I know, but this is important, Jinho. What you did, what your people sacrificed, it means something. The galaxy needs to hear it from you." Jinho wanted to refuse. He was tired. He was grieving. He just wanted to go home. But maybe the Admiral was right. Maybe the galaxy did need to hear this. "All right," he agreed. "I'll go." The Galactic Council chambers were even more impressive in person than they appeared in recordings. Representatives from 40 species sat in their designated sections, arranged in a great circle around a central platform. Jinho walked to that platform, still wearing his uniform. He hadn't bothered to change or clean up. Let them see what war looked like. Let them see the price of their inaction. The Chancellor called the session to order. "Captain Jinho of Earth, you stand before this council to give account of recent events at Velrun Colony 7. The council commends you for your initiative in responding to the crisis." Initiative. Such a careful word. Not courage, not sacrifice, initiative. "The council has questions about your actions," the Chancellor continued. "First, why did you engage the Krathok swarm with such limited forces?" Jinho stared at him. "Because no one else would." The Thexian representative, the same one who had refused to help, shifted uncomfortably. "Surely you understand that military decisions must be based on strategic calculations. The swarm was too powerful. Sending ships would have been wasteful." "Wasteful?" Jinho repeated. He looked around the chamber at all these powerful beings, these advanced civilizations. 8,000 Velrun civilians are alive because humans decided their lives were worth the risk. 400 of my people are dead because they believed saving innocence was more important than strategic calculations. We don't question your bravery, the Morvian representative said. But surely you see that your actions were reckless. If your entire fleet had been destroyed, Earth would be defenseless. And if we had done nothing, Jinho shot back, Earth would be safe but the Velrun would be extinct. Is that the trade you recommend? Safety at the cost of our souls? The chamber fell silent. Jinho took a breath, trying to control his anger. You asked why we went. I'll tell you. We went because someone called for help and we could answer. We went because we believe that the strong have a duty to protect the weak. We went because sitting in safety while others die was not something we could live with. He looked directly at the Thexian representative. You said helping was wasteful. I say refusing to help when you have the power to do so is worse than wasteful. It's cowardice. Outrage rippled through the chamber. 6 months passed. The damaged ships returned to Earth for repairs. The dead were buried with honor. Families mourned. Life went on as it always did, even after terrible loss. But something had changed. The footage from the Battle of Velrun Colony 7 spread across the galaxy, faster than any news in recorded history. Every species saw it, the small human fleet charging into impossible odds. The desperate fight against the Krathok swarm. The refusal to retreat even when all logic said they should. And most importantly, everyone saw Jinho's speech to the Galactic Council. His words were repeated on 1,000 worlds in 100 languages. The Velrun will remember who came when they called, and who didn't. On Earth, Jinho tried to return to normal life. It wasn't easy. He had been promoted to Admiral, given medals, celebrated as a hero, but he still saw the faces of the 400 who didn't come home. Their ghosts lived in his quarters, his dreams, his quiet moments. Nari had been promoted to commander and given her own ship. She visited him often, bringing news from the fleet. She told him about the changes happening across Earth's military. Every officer candidate now studied the Battle of Velrun. Every tactical course included lessons on courage and sacrifice. You started something, she said one day as they shared coffee in his office. The whole galaxy is watching us now. Is that good or bad? Jinho asked. She smiled. I think it's what we needed, to be seen as we really are, not as young or reckless, but as people who stand up when it matters. Hyunwoo had become Earth's head of military engineering. He used the lessons learned from modifying the weapon systems to develop new technologies, better shields, faster engines, weapons that could punch through organic armor. If we ever face the swarm again, he told Jinho, we'll be ready, and next time we won't lose so many. Sora continued her medical work, but she also became an ambassador of sorts. She traveled between Earth and Velrin space, building connections between their medical communities. The Velrin had techniques humans could learn. Humans had resilience the Velrin admired. She told Jinho about the memorial the Velrin had built. A monument on their homeworld listing the names of every human who died saving them. 400 names carved in stone that would stand for generations. They don't forget, Sora said. Every year on the anniversary, they hold a ceremony. Children place flowers at the memorial. They teach their young about the day humans came when no one else would. Taewon took over training for Earth's Marine Forces. He was harder on his students than any instructor had a right to be, but they loved him for it. Because they knew he was preparing them to survive what he had survived. Every one of them volunteers, he told Jinho. When I tell them about Velrin, about what we faced, about what we lost, they still volunteer. That's humanity. We don't back down. The Steadfast had been saved, barely. Commander Daehyun and his skeleton crew managed to keep the reactor stable until rescue ships arrived. The ship was too damaged to repair fully, but they turned her into a memorial. She orbited Earth now, a reminder of sacrifice and courage. But the biggest changes came from outside Earth. The Velrin formally requested a permanent alliance with humanity, not through the Galactic Council, but a direct treaty between their peoples. They offered technology, resources, whatever Earth needed, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Ambassador Keyleth came to Earth for the signing ceremony. She met with Jinho privately before the official events. My people were dying, she said. We had given up hope. And then you came. 5 ships against an armada. 400 people who chose to die rather than let us face extinction alone. She touched his hand gently. We will never forget this debt. There's no debt, Jinho said. We did what anyone should have done, but you were the only ones who did it. That means everything. Other species began reaching out to Earth as well. Small powers. Minor civilizations that had been ignored by the great empires. They saw what humanity did. They saw that humans valued life over strategic advantage. Trade agreements were signed. Defense pacts were proposed. Earth went from being a footnote in galactic politics to a power that couldn't be ignored. The Thexian Empire, embarrassed by comparison, tried to rebuild their reputation. They committed troops to peacekeeping missions. They increased aid to struggling colonies, but everyone knew why. They were trying to live up to the standard humans had set. The Galactic Council itself changed. New protocols were established for responding to distress calls. Response times were mandated. Military assistance became a requirement of membership, not a suggestion. It was called the Velrin Protocol, but everyone knew it should have been called the Human Protocol. One evening, Jinho stood on the observation deck of Earth's orbital command station, looking out at the planet below. The lights of cities twinkled like stars. Somewhere down there, families were having dinner. Children were playing, people were living their lives in peace. 400 people had died to protect that peace, to protect the idea that the strong should defend the weak. That mercy was not weakness. That fury at injustice was not a flaw, but a feature of humanity's character. A transmission came through. Another distress call, this time from a mining colony on the frontier. Raiders were attacking. The local defense force was overwhelmed. Jinho listened to the desperate plea. He checked the fleet status. Earth had ships ready. They could respond. The other powers were already debating, calculating, considering strategic value. Jinho didn't wait for the debate to finish. He opened a channel to his fleet. All available ships, this is Admiral Jinho. We have a distress call from the Outer Rim. Hostile forces attacking a civilian target. I'm authorizing an immediate response. Who's with me? The responses came back instantly. 6 ships, 10 ships, 20 ships. Captains volunteering without hesitation. Crews ready to go, because that's what humans did. Plot your courses, Jinho ordered. We leave in 1 hour. As the fleet began to mobilize, Jinho received a message from the Galactic Council. The Chancellor himself. Admiral Jinho, we haven't finished evaluating the situation. Your response is premature. With respect, Chancellor, people are dying. We don't need permission to do what's right. This is not how the Council operates. Then maybe the Council needs to change how it operates. He ended the transmission. Nari appeared beside him on the observation deck. She'd been given command of one of the response ships. The Council is going to be furious, she said. Let them be furious. We'll be too busy saving lives to care. She smiled. That's why people follow you, Admiral. You don't ask if it's profitable or strategic. You just ask if it's right, and is it right? Always has been. The fleet departed on schedule. 20 human ships racing to answer a call for help that no one else was answering. Again. Word spread quickly. The humans were responding. The humans always responded. In the council chambers, representatives watched the human fleet jump to hyperspace. Some were angry. Some were embarrassed. Some were thoughtful. The Velrin ambassador stood and addressed the chamber. My people have a saying now. When we face darkness, when hope seems lost, we say, wait for the humans. Because we know they will come. Not because they have to, but because they choose to. She looked around the chamber at the assembled powers. Perhaps we should all aspire to be worthy of that faith. On the mining colony, the desperate colonists received a transmission. A human voice, calm and steady. This is Commander Nari of the Terran Defense Force. We received your distress call. Help is on the way. Hold on just a little longer. The colonists cried with relief, because they knew. The humans always came. Jinho watched his fleet through the tactical display. 20 ships full of people who had volunteered to risk their lives for strangers. He thought about the 400 who had died at Velrin, about the thousands who had been wounded, about the price of doing what was right. It was a high price. Too high maybe, but the alternative was worse. The alternative was becoming like the other powers, calculating the value of lives, deciding who was worth saving and who wasn't. Humanity had looked at that path and rejected it. They had chosen fury over calculation, compassion over strategy, courage over safety, and the galaxy was changing because of it. Taewon had been right months ago on the Indomitable before the battle. Sometimes fury was exactly what the universe needed. Not mindless rage, not violence for its own sake, but righteous anger at injustice. The fury of seeing innocence threatened and refusing to accept it. The rage of having the power to help and choosing to use it. That fury burned in humanity's heart. It drove them to impossible acts of courage. It made them fly into hell itself to save people they didn't know. It made them stand alone against overwhelming darkness because no one else would stand at all. Other species had lost that fire somewhere along the path to civilization. They had learned to calculate, to prioritize, to be logical. They had forgotten that sometimes logic wasn't enough. Sometimes you needed to care so much that logic didn't matter. Humans had never forgotten that lesson. Maybe they never would. Admiral Jinho stood watching his ships vanish into hyperspace, racing to save lives, and he smiled. Because somewhere in the galaxy, people were crying for help, and humanity was answering that cry. Not because it was profitable, not because it was safe, not because the odds were good,